Mastering MuseScore. Welcome to the MuseScore Café. So this is my weekly series I do on Wednesdays where I talk about some aspect of making music using MuseScore. So each week I usually have a theme that I talk about, and this time my theme is going to be, I'm calling it Do It Once. It's about avoiding repetitive operations, figuring out ways of only having to do something once. So that's kind of the theme that I'm going to be going with here. I've pinned to the top of the chat a link to my online school, the Mastering MuseScore School. That's our sponsor, and I definitely recommend, if you haven't already enrolled in my Mastering MuseScore complete online course, that is the ultimate reference on using MuseScore. So you can get all your questions answered and stuff by going through the course there, as well as my music theory courses and so forth. So, end of commercial, and welcome everyone who's here, and thanks for checking in. It's always great to see where people are from. So, by the way, if people are just getting here, you might want to scroll up and see there was a question from Francois that is, I'm guessing, I didn't really understand the question, and maybe, Francois, if you ask the question in French, maybe someone else here would be able to answer. If anyone here else speaks French who might be in a position to answer, let us know. Let us know who else speaks French here. So hopefully we can get the question answered, and if maybe we try again to translate the question, maybe I'll be able to understand better. But as it is, I'm just not understanding it. So I want to talk about this idea of avoiding repetitive operations. So when I talk about repetitive operations, I really mean anything that you end up doing a lot and you wonder, gee, is there any way that I could avoid having to do this a whole bunch of times and just find a way to do it once? So I'm going to show you an example here. I'm going to show you a lot of examples. I've sort of made a list in my head here of some different things. So look at this. So I can totally see I use that technique here, and kind of to my detriment, but I wanted to put an accent on all of those notes. And yes, you can select the notes one at a time and add an accent, but that's not what I wanted. I didn't want to put an accent on this, the second half of the tie, but let's ignore that. Let's say that I have a series of notes and I want to put an accent mark on all of them. So let me select this group of notes right here. If I select that measure right there and I want an accent mark on all of them, the easiest way to do that is to select the measure and then go to the articulations palette and click the accent symbol. And that puts an accent on all of those notes, including the second half of the tie, which I don't really want. But that's I'll talk about how to avoid that in a second. So I see that there's some questions coming in here. So as far as Google Translate, yeah, you can go to another window and try that. So please, I recommend that people have that discussion a little bit offline and try to figure out how to get that question answered, or at least maybe understood better so we can ask it in English and I can get the answer. Jean, I see you have a question about muting individual staves in a piano. So in general, I do the Ask Me Anything session the first week of the month. That'll be next week, but I don't mind answering a few unrelated questions here. So I will try to do this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the mixer. Here's my piano staff. I'm going to go to the mixer with it's F10. We'll open the mixer. And when you go to the piano staff, you'll see that there is, I can expand the piano staff, will show me that there's a chord symbol channel here. You can't really see that that's what it says until I click on it, but it says chord sims. So there's a regular channel, a normal channel, and a chord symbols channel. So I have complete independent control of that, but I don't have independent control of the two staves, except at the top. So if I select the normal channel here, at the top here, I can mute the individual voices of the two staves separately. So can do that. Okay, so so that's something you can definitely do there. You could also, instead of creating one piano instrument, create two instruments. Piano right hand, piano left hand. Just have two piano instruments and have them each have one each. So I'll come back and maybe address that next week if you need further help. Okay, so now Francois's question is making a little more sense as far as getting pictures. Oh, okay, so last week I talked about using a PDF and putting it into a score. So this was a PDF that I found online. Oh, no, that was a PDF that Colleen had emailed me. And then what I did was I took a picture of the PDF. And the thing is, the way you can take a picture of things, if it's something in MuseScore, you can use this image capture tool to take a picture. I can select this and do this here, and then press Control C to copy. And now press Escape to get out of there. And now I can click somewhere like a frame here and say Control V to paste. And here's that picture. So where you get the picture, I did it by using the screenshot, but the screenshot tool only lets you take pictures of your score. If you want to take a picture of something else, you need a different tool. Like if I want to take a picture of some random PDF file, I need to use the screenshot tool built into my computer. So I have one. There is a tool built into my computer. There's a special key on my keyboard that lets me take a screenshot, and I can take a screenshot, a picture of my palettes, for instance. And then actually, it's not Control C for this. I press the capture button. And then I can come over here and Control V, and there's pick my palettes. So whatever your computer is on Windows, I think there's a print screen button and maybe Control print screen. So maybe someone else can help with that. But that's how you get the picture. I just displayed the PDF normally and then did a screenshot of it using the tools that my computer provides. Okay, so again, I think on next week's session, because next week is the first week of the month, the Ask Me Anything session, that'll be the better week to ask questions that don't relate to my topic, because then I'll just talk about, I'll talk about whatever anyone wants to talk about. But I am going to try to keep to the theme here, at least to some extent. I mean, I go on digressions. And in fact, here's another digression for you. Notice, you may be noticing, if you're an astute observer, that my screen looks a little different than usual. This is because I spent some time customizing my toolbar. This came up in discussion. I've always known it's possible to customize toolbars, and I've done a little bit of customization over the years in different workspaces and things, but I decided I wanted to create a customized toolbar that looks the way you see here. It's only one row and only the buttons I need. So this is my editing workspace. If I flip, apparently it's going to hang right now. Hello. Okay. If I switch to my advanced workspace, which is the one that most of you are probably in, you'll see there's two whole rows of all these icons. But I never use these duration icons because I use the keyboard shortcuts for those. I don't use these file icons because I use keyboard shortcuts or the menu for those. And by the time and I don't use the tie button or the rest button. I don't use any of those buttons because I use shortcuts or menu items or other things. So I figured once I got rid of the stuff that I don't use, I could get it all onto one row. So the way you do that is, first of all, I created a new workspace. I pressed that plus button. And the plus button, when you do that, it lets you create a new workspace. And make sure you pick toolbars as the extra components to save. That way the custom toolbar setup you do will only be in that workspace. So in my editing workspace, what I did was I went to View, Toolbars, Customize Toolbars. And here's where you can basically customize which buttons. Like you see that here's the actions that are in the node input toolbar, but I didn't want all those. So I click the 128th note, and then I just oh, I can't change the advanced workspace toolbars. I can only change my custom ones. So all right, let me go to my cafe workspace, because I've already created a special workspace just for playing around in. So in my cafe workspace, if I go to View, Toolbars, Customize, now you'll see when I select that 128th note, I press the arrow here, that moves it to Available. Available just means you're not using it. So this is the list of buttons that are on your toolbar. This is the list of buttons that are available to add to your toolbar but aren't there right now. So so anyhow, I can remove, like if I do this and do that, now the 128th note is about to be gone. And I can also maybe move the quadruple dot, because I'm never going to use a quadruple dot in my life. I'm never going to use a triple dot in my life. I don't even use double dots much, but now you see those are gone from the toolbar. So once you delete enough things from the toolbar, then you can rearrange the toolbars. You just drag them, right? Click this thing and drag it up here, and it all kind of sort of fits, but not really. And so there's like the rest of the things that didn't fit, right? But once you delete enough things, it fits on one line. So anyhow, that's something that I did. So you always use the tool buttons. There's nothing faster about a toolbar button than a keyboard shortcut or anything else. It's a question of which you can get to faster. I can press Control S a lot faster than I can put my finger on the touchpad and move over to the toolbar and click the save button. I'm using the keyboard for everything, as you've probably noticed. I use the mouse as little as possible. So yeah, that was a bit of some other unrelated things here, but that's good. So I'm going to come back to my thing with the accents. So I'm going to undo all my changes on this score here. And let's say I want to put some accents on all the notes in this measure. I'm going to press Shift V. That's the shortcut to add accents. And by selecting the measure first and then doing the shortcut, it adds the accents to what's selected. And the palette works the same way. But as you saw, there was an issue when I did that, if I did that with ties. When I do that with ties, now I have all the tied notes getting accents too. And I don't want that. But what I can do is Control click to remove the notes I don't want to get tied. So I'm Control clicking individual notes, and maybe this isn't actually faster in this case, but there might be some cases where it is. So I selected the whole measure, then I started Control clicking notes I don't want to get accents, and now I can press Shift V, and only the notes that I want to get accents get accents. So my first hint for you as far as avoiding repetitive actions is, if you have something you want to apply to a lot of things, select those things first, then give the command to apply the thing, and then it'll apply to all of them at once. This also applies to things like dynamics. If I decide that I want actually I want to go to the end here, because now I remembered this accent here. I don't want those accents. I must have used that same technique before and forgot that I don't want these accents. So I'm just going to Control click them to select them all. And I'm selecting all of these accents that are in the middle of ties like that. And now I can press Delete, and they're all gone at once. So Control click as a way of selecting multiple things. They don't have to be adjacent. They can just be all over the place. That's another way of avoiding repetitive things. I didn't have to select, delete, select, delete, select, delete, select, delete. I went select, 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 and then one, delete. So that's another little avoiding of repetition thing. And of course, now I managed to lose my train of thought as far as what I thought I was going to talk about next, but that's okay. I got plenty of things to mention. Oh, I want to save this now because that's something I had done wrong a time ago. Oh, dynamics. I want to do dynamics. Ha. So the thing you could do is if I decide, you know what, I want a dynamic marking on this note, and this note. The first note of, oops, I want to click the note. And that's kind of a drag. If you accidentally click a stem, it's off. So I click the first note of the measure, control click them, and then I can go to the palette and give them all a dynamic all at once. So there you go. So by selecting the notes you want to apply something to, then applying the thing, you can apply them all at once. Now this also goes for settings. And so instead of talking about applying elements like accents or dynamics, let's talk about settings. Again, if I look at them and decide, you know, all of these notes here, let's see, what if I decide I want all these piano notes to be a little quieter than otherwise? So the way to make them a little quieter, like I could put a dynamic marking on them, yes, but let's say I just want them a little bit quieter and I want to just tweak it a tiny bit. I can select those measures, but when I do that, you'll see the inspector is now kind of uninteresting, right? It only shows you a handful of things. That's because there's more things selected than just notes. There's the notes, there's the stems, there's the beams, there's the ties, there's the accidentals. All this stuff is selected. But if I click the Notes button in the inspector, now it limits the selection to just the notes in that range. And now I can go do whatever I want, like change the velocity, add a -10 to the velocity, which makes it just a little quieter. Yeah, you can't even tell it was a little quiet. It was so little quieter that you couldn't even tell it was quieter. But let's do something different this time. I'm going to reset that one. Maybe I make them all small. And now they're all small. And by the way, I hit the small here, the note head small, and that only makes the note head small. It doesn't make the beams and everything else smaller. You want to come up here to the chord section and hit small. And now you'll see it shrunk the beams and everything else. So if you have some operation you want to do to a lot of notes, then you select the measure and then press the Notes button in the inspector. And now you can do all these things you want to do in the inspector. You can, like I just did, make them small, change the velocity, change the tuning, change whatever you want, change the color, etc. How do you hide all chord symbols? All right, there's a good one there. So normally V is the shortcut to hide a chord symbol, or to hide anything, right? I press this chord symbol, press V, and now it's invisible. On screen, it's grayed out, so I can still select it, but it's invisible. And actually, notice it closed up the space also between those steps. When it was visible, it needed to create some extra space there so that the B flat 7 didn't collide with the word mute. But as soon as I made the B flat 7 invisible, then the word mute was able to fall down like that. So by doing it once, I made it invisible. But if I want to make all of them invisible, I right-click one, select. This is one of the things I wanted to show. So select all similar elements. All similar elements will now select all chord symbols everywhere in the score. And now all the chord symbols are selected, all across all staves and everything. And then press V, boom, and now they're all invisible. Right? I will undo that. What if I only want to make them invisible on the bass part? Because I wrote out the bass part. Maybe I don't want the bass player to have chord symbols. Sorry, Michael. I'll right-click the B flat 7 and say select all similar elements in same staff. Now, the piano B flat 7 is still not selected, but all the other chord symbols on the bass staff are selected, and I can press V. The other thing I can do is if I just decide that maybe I don't want the chord symbols in one part of the piece, like maybe I don't want these four chord symbols here to be invisible. I can make the selection of where I want to select chord symbols. Right-click one of those chord symbols and then say select all similar elements in range selection. And when I do that, now just those chord symbols in that range are selected, and I can make those invisible. And again, the other chord symbols outside that range remain visible. So all of those options are really kind of nice. And there's other ones too, like if I right-click a chord symbol and say select more, it gives me other options here. So there's same subtype, and the subtype has to do with like text styles and things. So like if you use alternate chord symbols, which I don't think I use in here, then the alternate one will be marked alternate chord symbol, and this would let you hide just the alternate chord symbols. Or here you can also say only the ones in the same staff, or only the ones in the same voice, or only the ones on the same beat. Hey, I could get rid of all the chord symbols on beat 1 by saying select chord symbol, same beat. Now this chord symbol on beat 1 is selected. This chord symbol on beat 1 is selected. All the chord symbols on beat 1 are now selected. Why would you want to do that? I don't know, but whatever. The option is there. There would be reasons to do that for things other than chord symbols. But in the dialog box, in that dialog box, select more, there will be different options in this dialog box depending on what you selected. If you right-click a note and then say select more, you'll see all these other options. Same pitch, same string, since this is on a guitar staff that I selected. Same note type, 16th note. Same duration, 16th. The difference between note type and duration is duration. If I had picked a dotted note, like let me pick a dotted note. Here's a dotted 16th note. Select. Come on. Every once in a while, it seems like it doesn't want to show me the menu, and I don't know why. So you can see now, same note type, 8th note, same duration, dotted 8th. And now I can select all my dotted 8th notes and do whatever I want with them. So yeah, there's a lot of options for selecting the things you want to select, and then you can apply whatever you want to apply to all of them together. But that's all well and good if you only want to affect the things that you've already entered. But what if you want to affect them all? Like, what if you just decide, I like a lot of things about the jazz font. I mean, I'm ambivalent, frankly, about the handwritten look for the music notation itself. I'm ambivalent. I don't hate it. I don't love it. It's fine, whatever. But I do like it very much for the chord symbols because it's got the right weight. It's got the right. I don't know. It just looks. They look better than any other non-handwritten fonts to me for reading chord symbols, especially when you make them big and all the nice formatting with the superscripting. But there's a few things that I actively don't like this font for dynamics. I'm not a fan of that font. So I could select the FP and change it from Muse Jazz Text to one of the other ones, Bravura Text. Oh, I forgot. It doesn't actually, the dynamic symbols, that doesn't actually work that way. So let me just put that aside for a second and say, what if I just wanted them bigger? Well, if I want this FP to be bigger, I can come here and say bigger. And now that one is bigger. It's 14-point font. But the rest of them are still the same size. Well, yes, I could right-click one dynamic. I could right-click a dynamic and say select all similar elements and make them all 14-point font. And I could do that. But the problem is, if I do that, it affects all the dynamics that are in the score right now, but not the ones I'm about to enter. So if I enter a new dynamic now, I go back and say dynamics P, it's back to the original size. That's because I don't want to just do the ones that are in the score now. I want to make this a style setting. So instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to right-click that dynamic again, select all similar elements, and I'm going to reset the size. It's important to reset the size so they're all at their defaults. Now what I'm going to do is just click one of them, and did I not reset them all? Yeah, I did. That one was different. I can make that one bigger and then hit the Set as Style button. When I do that, it affects all of the dynamics that are already in the score, but it also affects dynamics that I haven't entered yet. So the Set as Style is really a nice thing because you don't have to select everything. You can just change one dynamic and then change its size or whatever, and then hit the Set as Style button, that S icon in the inspector. Now, you don't have to use the inspector to change style settings. You can also go to Format, Style, and here's all of these settings all in one dialog box. There's a zillion style settings here, and if you click Text Styles, then you can get to where those dynamics were, and there's zillions of text styles. So if you want to make a whole lot of changes, you can do them all within this dialog box. But I'm almost never doing that, so I tend to not use this box all that often. So that's what am I saying? That's how you can set something as a style. Now, by the way, Graham, that also regarding the whole thing about keyboard shortcuts, it's a personal thing as to which one is quicker. For me, I'm going to tell you that it was tendonitis issues that got me using keyboard shortcuts like 30 years ago. 30 years ago, my God. Working for Hewlett Packard, doing a lot of programming, and had a ergonomic specialist that HP had there, came into the office and kind of looked at my setup and made all these adjustments to the height of my chair and how things were positioned. And one of the things that came from that is not wanting to move over because my mouse was off to the side, and eliminating this sideways motion to get to the mouse, and this motion of moving the mouse, that eliminating those motions was a big part of what I did to improve the health of my arm. And I find that a touchpad actually is better than a mouse. Some people don't like the touchpad or they prefer a mouse, but for me, it's much less motion, but still, it's something. I would much rather just have my hand on the keys most of the time, and so that's what I'll do. But as long as you can do something that's relatively efficient, if your mouse is way off to the side, then you have to keep moving your hand, all this arm motion. There's no way that's going to be as fast as typing something. But it does require you to learn the shortcuts. So there is that. I see Michael Frank has a question about applying the dynamic markings for voice above the line. Okay, so that's a good question that I don't have a good answer to. So what I'm going to do right now is undo all my changes because I don't want any of this stuff in my score other than those deleted these guys. I want to read. I think I actually saved it, right? So whatever, I'm not going to worry about it. If I want dynamics above the staff, so that's a thing for vocal music, right? We put the dynamics above the staff. You can't have separate style settings for different staves. That's a feature we would love to have someday, but right now we don't. But let's pretend this trumpet staff was a vocal staff. What I would do is I would flip one above the staff with X. No, I'm not going to do that, because if I do that, and then if I do that, if I flip one above the staff with X and then come to the inspector and find where it says placement, I can then hit the Set as Style button, which I need to make the inspector slightly larger to see. The Set as Style button, boom. Now all my dynamic markings are above the staff, and in doing that, it made the spaces open up and it didn't fit on the first page anymore. So if I'm doing a strictly choral staff, then I can set that as the style So by flipping one above and then hitting placement, and now they're all above. But if you have a mixture of vocal and instrumental staves, now you don't necessarily want that. You don't want them all above the staff. You only want the vocal ones. So instead of that, what I'll do is I will just say all similar and same staff and flip just those above. And yeah, that means it doesn't affect future ones. So wait until the end to do it. And by the way, notice that select similar considers dynamics and hairpins to be separate. So now I'll have to go to the hairpin and do the same thing. Select all similar and same staff X. And now the hairpins are above the staff also. So unfortunately, we don't have a fantastically great story for that, but we have a decent story for that. Yeah, so that's my best thing. So if you've got like something where you've got a lot of instrumental parts and one solo vocalist, then I would just move the vocalist above the staff. If, on the other hand, you got a whole big choir and one piano accompaniment, then what I would do is set the style to be above, and then I would just move the piano below. Someone, I think it was during one of these cafes, actually came up with a nice little hack solution if that special case is happening. And it goes like this. I'm going to create a new score, and I'm going to use choral SATB plus piano template. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to enter I just entered C's across the board. And now I'll select that whole range and enter a dynamic. Oops, I pressed it twice. But that's okay because the notes weren't selected after I pressed it the first time. So now I have my dynamics there on all the notes. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of, instead of adding the dynamic to the top staff of the piano, I'm going to delete that one, and I'm only going to use the dynamic on the bottom staff of the piano. So now I can select that dynamic, flip it above, and hit the Set as Style in the inspector. And now this will work. You might want to fiddle with the offset on these, but it puts the piano dynamic between the staves. So in this special case of mostly choral music but one piano accompaniment, you can set the style to be above staff and only enter your dynamics on the bottom staff of the piano, and it kind of sort of works. The spacing might be a little wonky, but it does work. As far as shortcuts go, by the way, because I talk about them a lot, right? What you find is the commands you use the most, you can remember the shortcuts for if you use them. And you can customize them to be easier to remember. I tend not to customize a ton of my shortcuts, but I have customized some, mostly because, like, on my keyboard, certain key commands are reserved for other things in the operating system. But first of all, most things that you might do in MuseScore, you do a few things over and over again, like entering notes. We enter notes a ton. So let's think about that. The entering notes, C, D, E, F, G. You already know those shortcuts. It's just those letters. What about the durations? Well, 4 is 8th note. 5 is 16th note. 5, is half note. Sorry, 5's quarter note. I know these things. I just don't know the words. And then 6 is half note. Which, of course, didn't actually enter because I had to tie across the bar. 6 is half note. 4, 5, 6, 8th, quarter, half. 80% of what you're going to do is those things. 4, 5, 6, 8th, quarter, half. And then if you need to go shorter, 3 is 16th note. If you need to go longer, 7 is whole note. You can learn that in 10 minutes of use. You will get used to that. So between that and the notes themselves, the letter names, yeah, you'll know those. And as you do things enough, you'll learn the shortcuts. And so note entry, you do a ton of. Now, the shortcut for relatively uncommonly used commands, you might not remember. Like, there's a shortcut. Let me just jump through the menu here, looking for a command I don't use a lot. See, the thing is, I actually use a lot of these commands, and now I know these things. But there's a shortcut for save as, Control-Shift-S. Yeah, maybe I don't do that one enough to remember. But yeah, so some of the ones you don't use a lot, maybe you'll never remember them, and then that's fine. Go to the menu for those. But if you can stay on the keyboard as much as possible, it is more efficient. And when I talk about avoiding repetitive things, one of the things that we could avoid having to do is move back and forth from mouse to keyboard. So anyhow, don't forget to add the dot. I'm not sure which dot you mean, Joanne, but in any case, 4, 5, 6. Oh, add the dot to my toolbar. Yeah, no, I don't. I use the keyboard shortcut for that also. So if I want a dotted quarter, it's 5 dot, and then I type my F. So there you go. Now, could you get away with not using the keyboard at all, doing everything with the mouse? Well, yes, until you have to type, right? That's one of the things you actually need to use the keyboard for. There's a couple other random things that can only be done by keyboard. And of course, now I can't remember what they are, but yeah, there's a couple other random things. Oh, the J command. The J command is a good one to know. If instead of F, I want an E sharp, J will spell that F as the other ways. So G double flat or E sharp or F, right? These different spellings for F. The J command flips between them. There's no way to get to that via the mouse. There's just someone forgot to add that command to the menu. And so the only way to get that command is with a keyboard shortcut. It's one of the few things that's that way. So yeah, so as far as the toolbar goes, yeah, I do have shortcuts. I define shortcuts for these accidentals, but I don't trust my memory. So like if I want to enter an F sharp, I think I did Control Shift left bracket. Oh, that's flat apparently. Control Shift right bracket sharp. There we go. Control Shift right bracket. If you look at the toolbar, you'll see left bracket did a flat, right bracket did a sharp, and backslash does a natural, because those three keys are in a row: flat, sharp, natural. It's not the order that they are in the toolbar, because the toolbar is, you know what? I don't like the toolbar order. I don't like that. I'm going to fix it right now, because gosh darn it, I can do that. If I go to where toolbars, customize tool. Oh, I can't customize because I'm in node input mode, apparently. Let me get out of node input mode, view, toolbars, customize toolbars. So I don't like the order of these accidentals. I don't double sharp, sharp. I guess I sort of understand the order, but to me, it's backwards. Yeah. I feel like I want it to go left to right, flats to sharps. So I'm just going to move the double flat to the top, move the flat next, then the natural, then the sharp, then the double sharp. Boom. Ha, my toolbar is happier now. I'm happier. Now, here's another little pro tip. If you're ever worried about crashing MuseScore, and I do enough weird things during these demonstrations that I probably crash it as much as anyone. Realistically, if you crash MuseScore, you might lose your customizations that you did since the last time you started MuseScore. So sometimes what I do is just change workspaces. If I've done some customizations to my toolbar, I'll just change to another workspace, like the advanced workspace. And by doing that, it forces MuseScore to save the workspace I was in, and then I can flip back to it. Now, if I crash, I won't lose the settings. You could also actually quit MuseScore and reload it, but just switching workspaces is in principle enough. So there you go. And Jim's comment about keyboard layouts with different keyboard layouts. Yeah, I have that same issue. My Chromebook and my Windows machine have different layouts, and it does mess me up. And you'll see that. You'll see sometimes if I'm doing one of these demonstrations for my Windows computer, some of my navigation shortcuts that I've customized on my Chromebook, because Alt arrow does something special on my Chromebook. so I had to customize it. So what I've done is I've customized it on my Windows machine. So even though Alt Arrow would have worked to do what Alt Arrow is supposed to do, I can also use the bracket keys, etc. So I've tried to equalize things as much as I can, but you can't always equalize everything. So Graham, about entering a MIDI keyboard, no, I've demonstrated, and I think somewhere if you hunt back through the archives of the MuseScore Cafe, just on the YouTube channel, if you look at the playlist and then look for MIDI, I did do a demonstration of it, but I don't find it very efficient because I can type notes faster than I can play them, given that you have to also select the duration, right? I can type 4C, 3D, or whatever. I can type number, letter, number, letter, 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 number, number, letter, letter. I can type that sequence faster than I can click toolbar, press note, click tool. That's a lot of motion. And even you can actually customize keys on your keyboard to be durations. You can make like the low A be eighth note and the B flat be quarter note or whatever. You can make all these, you can customize all that by going to edit, preferences, node input. And when you turn on MIDI remote control, you'll have all these controls for recording shortcuts for all these commands. And so you could try to do that, but I don't find it faster, and it's going to spell all the accidentals in strange ways, and I'll have to spend time fixing that. So yeah, overall, I don't find it faster. Okay, so the action in the shortcuts dialog for adding a sharp, that's a good question. Since I brought it up, I better tell you. The unfortunate thing about accident, by the way, so let me show you about defining shortcuts since we're talking about it. Edit, preferences, shortcuts. You can search in here, but if I try typing the word flat, you'll notice it's disappointing. The reason it's disappointing is we don't actually use the word flat in the name of the shortcut. We use the actual flat symbol. So I'm going to try something, and then I've never tried what I'm about to do, but I got to try. So I'm going to create a staff text here, and I'm going to press Control-Shift-B. That's the shortcut to enter a flat sign into a text element. And now I'm going to select it, Control-C, and now I have no idea if this is going to work, but if it does, I will be happy to have learned something. I'm going to go back to preferences, and I'm going to paste that flat sign. It's either going to find the commands that have flat sign in them or it won't. Oh, I love it. I don't know. I'm easily amused sometimes. So if you can actually get an actual flat sign into the search bar, you'll find the commands for flats. But now that I've done that, you can see the answer. They all start with the word note input. So what you see here is a command for note input flat and note input non-toggle. So let me tell you about what the difference is between those. So they all start with the word note input. So if I type note input, you'll see there's a lot of commands, but not a million commands. This is one screen full worth of commands, and most of them are accidentals. Note input flat, natural, sharp, double flat, double sharp, flat, these are and then the rest of them are different note input commands. But most of these note input commands are the accidentals. So the difference between the note input and the note input non-toggle is the note input is, you'll see I have control shift bracket, which actually shows up as control brace. The non-toggle is tick and then bracket. So in my in my newsletter, I talked about these multi-keyboard sequences. So the regular, let me type an F. How do the toolbar flat button? It's a toggle, right? It means the next note will get a flat. And so I can type an A and get my flat, right? That's the regular note input flat. And if I do my Control Shift left bracket, you'll see it activated that button, and I press my A and get my A flat. So the regular flat but command basically activates the same command on the toolbar. The non-toggle version is, in my case, I customize it to be a sequence. I press tick followed by left bracket, and it applies a flat to whatever is selected, meaning the note I just entered. So for those of us who are still used to the way MuseScore worked 2 years ago, where you entered the note, then pressed the accidental, which is backwards from the right with the rest of note input works, right? Usually select a duration first, then the note. Select a voice first, then the note. Everything else in MuseScore works that way. Select the thing, then the note. But the accidentals were always backwards. Now the accidentals work the same way as everything else, but a lot of us are so used to the way it worked 2 years ago and more that we forget to enter our accidental. So I gave myself this little out. Tick followed by left bracket will retroactively add the flat sign. So that's the non-toggle flat. So the problem with the up and down arrows, I do use the up and down arrows all the time, but up and down arrows won't give me that E sharp, will they? It wants to spell F, right? And yes, I could go use I could enter if I want to enter an E sharp, I could type E. Oh, I had the toggle on. So let me try that again in the next measure. E, up arrow, and then J, and then J again to get E sharp. So yes, I can use the up arrows, and I do use the up arrows most of the time. But if I'm trying to enter something like a double sharp or a double flat or a note that enharmonically doesn't really make sense in the key, because MuseScore will say, hey, F is in the key. I don't want to give you an E sharp. It'll happily give me all the other sharps. It won't give me E sharp or B sharp because the key of C has an F in it. It will enter an E sharp if I'm in a key in which F sharp is in the key signature. If F sharp is in the key signature, then MuseScore will let me enter E sharp with an arrow key. So for special accidentals, then you can't just use the arrow. You'll either need to use J to respell, or you need to use the toolbar stuff. So there you go. What about a sharp or a natural? Well, so yeah, what does this say? Text flat? For the text. Thanks. I got your question. If you go in that text, Control-Shift-B was text flat. Control-Shift sharp. So the sharp sign on my keyboard is above the 3. So Control-Shift-3, which is basically Control sharp, enters a sharp sign. So for natural, you might want to think it's N, Control-Shift-N, but it's not, because that's a dynamic marking. It's going to be Control-Shift-H. Why H? Because lowercase h kind of looks like a natural sign. It's the best symbol we could think of. And I think there's other systems in the world that have used H as a shortcut for natural that people had suggested. So in any case, Control-Shift-H is the shortcut for natural. Now, the next question is, why didn't I use those same shortcuts for my actual accidentals? Because they're already used for other things, right? Control-N creates a new score. All the combinations already did other things, or at least some of them did. There was no easy way for me to implement all the flat, natural, and sharp, and the non-toggle flat, natural, and sharp. I couldn't find easy ways to do that using B, H, and 3. That they basically used other things. So as far as Dennis, your question about the numeric keypad, unfortunately, different systems work differently with the numeric keypad. So I tried to hedge in my newsletter, saying on some systems with numeric keypads, 3 and numeric 3 are different, but not on all, and the details are system dependent. So unfortunately, I can't tell you exactly what works on your system. But wait a minute. As an additional way, if Control-Shift-3 is a screenshot. So yeah, then you'll need to. I don't know if that one's redefinable, to be honest. I don't know if you can redefine those text shortcuts. They might be hard coded. Not sure. But what you can do is drag that symbol into a palette. Like you can have an annotations palette. All these symbols here, these are just text symbols that were in the special characters palette. So if I in my text here, if I type F2 to open the special characters palette, there's my sharp sign. I can just drag that guy right into my palette. And there it is now in my palette. And now all I got to do is click in the palette to enter a sharp sign there. So if you, when all else fails, you got that ace in the hole there, the special characters palette. One thing about the shortcuts dialog is you'll notice that there are some things that, like if I try to define a new shortcut for one of these things, for enter toggle, for just going into node input mode instead of N, if I want to do something else, if I type N, if I type my new shortcut now, first of all, it's got to be something that's not already used. I'll use Control Alt N. That's probably not used. Control Alt Shift N. It's now going to have both of them in there. If I press Add, it's gonna let me use either. If I press Replace, then I have to use the new one. The old one will get replaced. I don't know if that has anything to do with what's going on, but again, numeric keypads work differently on every system, so unfortunately I can't necessarily say what's going on there. All right, there's two things that I haven't gotten to yet that I want to make sure I get to, but this has been nice. We've had some different sort of things that have come up that are relating to things that I've talked about, but take us in other directions, right? So if we do this thing, like here, I've flipped the dynamics above the staff as a style setting. Well, what if I now want to use, if I've got these other scores and I want to be able to use those same style settings? Well, what you can do is make all the style settings you want, change sizes of things, change the position of things, change all the style settings you want. Then go to Format, Save Style. And when you do that, hello. When you do that, nothing happens because something is locked up and I don't know what. All right, either MuseScore crashed or that dialog has gone off my screen and I'm not sure which. Does escape get me out of it? Nope. So I think I successfully crashed MuseScore here. I'm not positive about that. Yeah, I've apparently managed to crash MuseScore. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kill it from here, from my terminal. And now we get to see if I successfully managed to remember when I wisely changed workspaces and back so that it would hopefully remember my toolbar settings. Now we get to find out if that worked. Ha, it did. And I will restore my session and everything's back the way it was. Yay. Okay, so now I'm going to try that again because it doesn't normally crash. So Format, Save Style. There's the Save Style dialog. Okay, so the Save Style dialog now lets me save dynamics above. And .mss is the extension. So dynamics above.mss is your file name. Save that. And now I can come to, and what it does when you do that, it takes all your style settings and saves them. So I'll come to my new score here, and if I go to dynamics and add a dynamic here, I can now go to Format, Load Style, and pick Dynamics Above, Open, and boom, Dynamics went above. right? So whatever other customizations I had made to my style settings will now be applied to this style, to this score. So you can retroactively, if you've customized one score with a lot of style settings you like, you can then apply those style settings to existing scores, which is a nice thing. Now, that's all well and good, but and so that's another one of these things that was on my original list of things that I knew I wanted to talk about as far as avoiding repetitive things. Because, why make the same style settings to a bunch of different scores? Make it to one and then just save it as a style set file and then load it into the other score. But what if you're going to want to create a lot of scores this way? How about if I just create my own version of the choral template that is customized this way? So what I can do now is, here's a score that's set up the way I want. And now what I can do is say, instead of saving a style, I'm going to save this score, save as, and I'm going to go not to my scores folder, but I'm going to go up a level to my templates folder, and I'll call it Dynamics Above. Now I'll call this one a fancier name because I might keep this one, Dynamics Above. And actually, I'm not, well, I'll do that. But actually what I want to do is, this isn't set up the way I want, really. Let me not do that. Let me save this one that way. So this is my Dynamics Above template. So let me save this. So let me close that one. This is set up with all the instruments the way I want, right? I've got soprano, alto, tenor, and bass, and piano, and that's how I want things. Let me get rid of all this junk here. And let me save this one and call this one Dynamics Above. And it's going to say, hey, you want to overwrite it? And yes, I do. All right, now I have a template. I saved it to my templates folder, right? Let me do that again so you can see. Save as. It's in my templates folder. So now when I do Control-N to create a new score, I'll call this Voices. And under Custom Templates, you'll now see Dynamics Above is now one of my custom templates. And when I press Finish on this thing, I have all those same instruments, soprano, alto, tenor, and bass. And if I enter a dynamic marking, it's above. So you can create custom templates. A custom template goes one beyond a style file. It goes a couple things beyond a style file. Number one is it actually saves the whole list of instruments. And it also lets you start right off from the beginning with exactly the style and instruments you want, so that you don't have to, first create the score, then load the style file into it. You just create this, and you don't have to select the instruments every time. Like in this case, let me actually get rid of this. What if I'm not writing for soprano, alto, tenor, bass? What if I'm writing for I'm going to have a guitar in there also. So let's add strings plucked classical guitar, and I add myself a guitar. Do I want it below the piano, really? That's what this thing tells me I should want. I don't believe that I really want it, so I'm going to move it up. And now I've got my guitar in here, and now I can save that. And now when I create a new score, again, new, if I now use my Dynamics Above template, it's got the guitar in there. So templates will have your instrument settings as well as your style settings. Again, if I select something and add a dynamic, the dynamic is above. So this is now all the things that I wanted to talk about. Let me just check out some questions that came in here. So question, can you apply a template to an existing score? No. So styles, yes. Template, no. And the difference will mean, therefore, like the list of instruments, basically, you can't load those instruments into an existing score. There's no way to do that. I can't even, it would be tricky to even define what that means if you've already got instruments in that score. Someone could probably if someone could define exactly how they wanted to work, someone could probably make a plugin that did it or write a new feature for it. But right now, it's not quite clear exactly how. Oh yeah, and the template can have custom headers. So, because headers are part of your style setting. Also, if you have a customized title frame, like you've made it bigger than usual or smaller than usual, or you've rearranged the position of things within it, that gets saved as part of a template also. So Michael, yeah, so no, the same thing I said before, we don't currently have a way to have different styles for different staves. We just can't do that. So you have to go with the majority rules. If you've got more voices than strings, make your style above and then fix the strings manually. Or if you've got more strings than voices, set the default below and fix the voices manually. That's the best we can do right now. Someday we'd all love to have separate styles for separate staves. All right. Well, that's been hopefully useful to people. I showed you a lot of different things, got to see a lot of different aspects of MuseScore and this idea of trying to avoid doing things a lot of times if you can get away with doing it just once. That's kind of the theme here. So that said, this has been the MuseScore Café with me, Marc Sabatella from Mastering MuseScore, and this has been my my episode where I talk about avoiding repetitive work and trying to find ways of doing something only once and having it apply multiple times. So that's been the theme here, and we got into a lot of other areas too as they came up, which is fine. Next week is the Ask Me Anything. So it's going to be all about answering your questions next week. So meanwhile, so be thinking of your questions. I'll set up a place where you can upload some scores if you need me to see a score in order to answer your question. Make sure you join my community because you'll need to do that to get to the place where you can upload them. And let me know that they're there. So at the top of the score, at the top of the chat here is my online school. This is where my complete online courses, as well as my music theory courses. Definitely check them out if you haven't already. Cannot recommend them highly enough. But also, once you get to the online school, you'll see a community link at the top. Click that. It takes you to the community. And join that if you haven't already. We have a lot of nice discussions in there. And it's where you can do things like post scores for comment from other community members and for me to look at during these cafe sessions as necessary. So thanks again, everyone. And I will see you hopefully tomorrow for the Music Masterclass. And if not, next week.